They didn't ask this. They're not that good, so I'm better than they are. So this is a waste of time. I'll just look in the mirror and ask myself some questions because of my awesomeness. I can just cure myself. Mm-hmm. I'm not really that conceited. Just a joke. But yeah, it's like if someone else would be like, if you're a firefighter, you're going to go to a therapy with another firefighter who's going to talk to you about how to use your equipment correctly and what that means to you. Yeah. That's right. And then you go back to your being a firefighter. So I wonder if that's one of the hangouts is, it really is, you're digging into your own stuff, but it's also a professional mirror.
Right.
Like, where do I stand? Mm-hmm. And it's also like, yeah, so I've been in the field for a while, yet if I see someone who's been in the field for 30 years, it's like, that's just a little less than I've been alive. So it's hard, because then I'm really going to see a professional mirror. And as a millennial-ish person, like if I see someone who's been in the field for 30 years, my initial thought is, well, what do I need to do? What courses do I need to take to get to that level tomorrow? It's like, well, it took 30 years to get there. But, you know, so for me, I feel some of that, I need to be better. Maybe this could be going deep. Like the imposter syndrome piece. Yeah. So for me, I think that's why it's hard to go to therapy and be open. And so when I first went, the guy would ask me questions. I was like, that's a terrible client. I was like, yep, yes, I don't think so. Maybe. Huh. Like, I didn't really give him much.
The resistant client.
Yeah, and I didn't really know how it worked. I'm like, are they just going to pull it out of me? Like, I don't want to cry in front of the guy. I don't know the guy. Like, all those things, I was very resistant.
I'm so glad you named that, because that was one thing that came up for me during my counseling too, this shame around how long the process of becoming a good therapist takes, or becoming a skilled therapist takes, and sitting in front of someone with all this experience who's asking these questions that just sound so eloquent, and it was really painful in the beginning, because it almost just heightened my shame around not being where I wanted to be yet. Yeah. And there came this point where I could find myself bringing the questions my therapist was asking me into a session with my clients, and almost just trying to mimic who she was. And so I had to really just surrender to the process and let it just be for me in session, rather than using my own counseling as this way to just push myself harder to become better as a therapist, because that could be so counterproductive.
What you described, I think we all struggle with, but I think it boils down to the a shield up against being vulnerable.
Yeah, you're right.
We do it all the time. I think that's what it boils. That's how I felt with mine. Like, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't know this guy. And the article I read earlier, I mentioned, it talks a lot about Carl Jung. I always feel like I'm always self-conscious of him saying that name right. And Freud had this discussion, put some, talked about some stuff in a book. But basically, the idea of the wounded healer, and you become a great clinician from your wounding, and then healing from the wound, because you know your pain. You can empathize with the pain and move forward and grow, and you can see it in people when they don't see it in themselves. And they think about it, that's being vulnerable, having a wound. Right. The process is being wounded, healing, getting wounded again because of work, because of clients or supervision, whatever it is, and then healing from it, and then doing it again and doing it again.
Exactly.
And it's exhausting. In school, they said you no longer have the convenience of not knowing why you feel the way you do. As a counseling student, and when they said that, I was like, oh, dang it. Yeah. That means work.
Right. It's like part of you is so afraid of letting your identity just unravel, because it does mean more work. And it's not possible to keep those walls up when you're a therapist.
Yeah.
Like, over time, the process will demand that of you, to bring down those walls, and you have to let yourself be changed. And I find myself fighting that every single day.
This gets some deep stuff.
Right?
Counselors and coffee. Whoop whoop. Mine had a Scotia creamer, but it ran out. See, I'm just deflecting with jokes now to get away from the vulnerability.
Damn it.
Did you guys see that? That's smooth.
Fighting against vulnerability again.
I know,
Brene
right?
Brown would be so ashamed of
I know, right? Please follow Brene Brown. We love your stuff. Yeah, the vulnerability piece. I think that's a big part of it. Why? Well, because I was thinking, for my style, I am like all about the relationship. I mean, they tell us in school it's the biggest predictor of the outcome of the therapeutic relationship.
Yeah.
But I feel like if we have a relationship, that relational bridge, you can do a ton with it. Like, if we have a good relationship and I know you, we trust each other, I can make jokes, or I can say, actually, I think you need to do this better, blah, blah, blah. If you didn't know me, like who are you? Who are you
to tell me that?
So it's like the relationship piece is what builds it. And I'm all about that. Yet, again, we're being vulnerable here, talking about our own counseling process. And it's weird, as highly as I value the relationship within everything, coworkers, therapy, whatever it is, I was so guarded against it. Don't know exactly why. That might be a whole nother section, because that could take a long time to get into that one.
I think that's so important to recognize where it doesn't mean that you don't have this value that's so strong to you.
Yeah.
It's just realizing where in your life you're not completely in alignment with it.
It's like, I do value it. Like, I look at it, I do value it, but why not this one area? It's interesting.
Yeah. It makes me think about my own counseling process, or my own process in my year of therapy, and how...
You're in therapy? Oh my gosh. Just get out of the field.
The stigma. I remember, I think it was 6 months into therapy when my therapist actually brought out the stages of change. And I like to think of myself as someone who is always in the action stage. And she gently informed me that I was in the pre-contemplation stage of change.
What was that like?
Well, I think
Excuse
it was
me?
like you were describing. At that point, we've built a strong enough relationship where she could point those things out to me. Whereas if she would have said that in the second session, I would have been like very resistant to it.
You know what? I need a referral to a different therapist, please. Someone who's not a jerk and doesn't know anything.
It's gonna tell me just good things about myself.
Yeah. Tell me all the hashtag live my best life.
Right. Something that I'd noticed about myself was that part of my stage of change where I was so resistant to feeling my own emotions. And that directly showed up in session when clients would be expressing their emotions. Like, I'd get feedback in my practicum that I was just frozen. And I think I wouldn't have known where that was coming from unless I did my own therapy. And recognizing and developing more compassion for my own defense mechanisms has been really helpful in that way.
That is really good. It's a good portion of chocolate.
Yeah.
You like yours? I just assumed.
I do. It's like...
It covers up
very good.
the very strong bitter.
I never thought I could drink coffee without cream.
I know, right?
This is...
You have hot chocolate laying around, you're good. If you had to tell other therapists one thing about why it's important to have your own therapy, what would you tell them? It's worthless. It's a waste of time.
You'll edit this, right?
Yes.
Think about it. Oh my gosh.
This topic of counselors getting counseling, I feel like as we talked more, it all stayed in the same realm of how therapy can help a counselor become a better counselor. That being said, what would you tell our audience out there, if you can tell them one thing about how therapy will help them as a clinician?
I would say it's the most practical and genuine way to practice empathy without really forcing the process of empathy. Because if you understand what it's like to sit in the client's seat and to be on that end of the process, I think as a therapist you will be way more intentional about the questions you're asking, the interventions you're using, because you'll also be able to feel a part of what that is to be receiving those interventions.
I guess my 2 cents of how therapy will help you as a counselor would be, if you don't get therapy, I think you will be stunted. Again, these aren't answers necessarily. We're just having a conversation about the issue. So my conversation is, I think if you don't go to therapy, don't work out some of these things, you'll become stunted as a therapist. Because I think you have blocks up because you won't be able to see stuff. And then you'll get frustrated because we're not able to help the person out as efficiently and as deeply as we want to. And then you start to feel like, well, this is a waste of time. I'm not being effective. And I think that's a recipe for burnout.